Hello and welcome to the Angus Report, a news program for cattle producers. I'm Bob Cervera.
And I'm Paige Wallace. From American Angus Association headquarters in St. Joseph, Missouri, we bring you the week's top headlines, including some tips for feeding drought-stressed corn and forage.
The EPA has pulled a proposed rule affecting feeding operations.
We look at some federal drought relief in the works for farmers and ranchers.
And we highlight a recent leadership event designed for building tomorrow's agriculture leaders.
This is the Angus Report.
Our top news this week. Congress may be in summer recess, but prior to the 5-week hiatus, legislators implemented drought relief measures for farmers and ranchers. Crystal Albers has a special report. So Crystal, what can producers expect and will it affect the Farm Bill?
Thanks, Bob. Before the August recess, legislators in the House of Representatives passed a disaster relief bill for drought-stricken farmers and ranchers. The emergency legislation would provide $383 million to cattle and sheep ranchers who've lost livestock in the drought. Payments would reimburse ranchers for 75% of their losses and would help with feed costs. It's unclear if the Senate will take up the bill in September, and many critics have questioned why the House would authorize a short-sighted drought fix instead of a new farm bill prior to the August recess. In the meantime, USDA has opened haying and grazing on lands enrolled in conservation programs, and the agency announced it will use nearly $16 million in financial assistance to help crop and livestock producers in 19 states.
The EPA recently withdrew a controversial rule that would have required large-scale cattle operations to submit a laundry list of information to the EPA under the Clean Water Act. The proposed rule would have required feeding operations to submit data such as cattle numbers, contact information, and acreage latitude and longitude, all information that would then be publicly available through the agency's website. The rule drew fire from many ranchers who cited increased risk to food safety among concerns. In withdrawing the proposed rule, EPA said it continued to consider feeding operations an important part of water quality planning, but that it could work with existing sources to obtain necessary information. Many livestock organizations applauded the decision.
Drought damage is a tough reality this year in almost every part of the country, and cattlemen are encouraged to take a few precautions when chopping silage or letting cattle out to graze on drought-damaged corn. Harvest timing, silage handling, and forage sampling can help avoid nitrate poisoning.
During a drought year, the plant's not able to metabolize all the nitrate that's available in the soil that we apply in the spring. So the nitrate can accumulate to a higher concentration or a concentration high enough to be potentially toxic. Ensiling is the best option. That will lower with a good job of ensiling the corn stalks. You can lower the nitrate concentration by 50%. Baling is an option, but it does not decrease the nitrate concentration appreciably, maybe 10% at the most. We also have had some people green chop and feed it immediately. That's the most dangerous way to utilize corn stalks if you don't know the nitrate concentration.
For people considering grazing cattle, experts suggest ranchers carefully monitor and rotate animals often. Leaves and tops of corn stalks contain fewer nitrates. Grazing or chopping drought-damaged corn immediately after a rainfall may worsen toxicity problems. Talk with your local extension agent or crop insurance advisor before feeding damaged corn or soybeans.
Drought is taking its toll on many summer plans, including the 2012 Nebraska Angus Tour. The Nebraska Angus Association has canceled this year's tour, originally scheduled for September 15th and 16th. Drought conditions played into the decision to cancel the event. Visit nebraskaangus.org for more information about next year's tour in Northeast Nebraska.
The Endangered Species Act was introduced in 1973 to prevent the extinction of certain species. However, after 2 decades, the ESA has resulted in severe land and resource restrictions for livestock producers and landowners and misuse by radical environmental groups. In addition, NCBA reports less than 2% of listed species have been recovered since the ESA was introduced.
One of the examples that the cattle industry faces that's upon us is the potential listing of the greater sage grouse in the West. And this is a species of bird that's found across 11 western states, and in our view is the target of a listing based on that very fact that its historical range is so vast. These special interest groups realized that if they were able to list the sage grouse, they could restrict the activities that they disagree with, namely livestock grazing on the federal lands. We're working with industry to provide that information to the agency that grazing does not have a negative impact on sage grouse and in fact likely benefits sage grouse and their habitat.
Clemson University researchers are exploring alternatives to high-priced corn. 2 studies conducted at Clemson over the last 5 years suggest those alternatives may already be in the pasture. One study focuses on 5 forage species for finishing beef cattle in the summer months or allowing for a shorter time period on corn after grazing. The second study is ongoing and compares grasses and legumes. Visit clemson.edu for more information regarding the research.
When the Angus Report returns, we look at the growing demand for quality Angus beef abroad.
We'll also meet a longtime cowhand that's dedicated his life to raising cattle in the Southern Plains.
Visit angus.org to continue watching this episode of the Angus Report.